Hey guys, Reese here and welcome back to the channel. So I'm sure it's no surprise for those of you that are actively looking to get into real estate, searching for your first property or maybe your second or 10th property, finding deals on market that are, one, just good deals but will make good rentals is becoming very, very difficult in today's market. Inventory, especially in Columbus, but I'm sure nationwide, is at all-time lows. Interest rates are still very low, and therefore prices, due to that low interest rate and lack of supply, are just being pushed to the moon on investment property. And so nowadays, really, if you want a cash flowing investment property, specifically multifamily, as I see it has a premium over, say, single family, you need to be putting 25, 30+% down on these properties in order for them to cash flow. And for those of you out there that are looking to do a house hack, the whole goal of a house hack is to put 5% down, live in one side, and make some money. So it's getting very, very difficult to find a deal that still works this way. Now, my last video covered me doing something called driving for dollars, which I normally don't do. I normally just pull a list from the auditor's website of, say, duplexes or 4-unit properties, or even a range, say 5 to 15 unit properties in a specific neighborhood, and then cold call or cold text all of those properties. However, last video I did driving for dollars, which was me driving in my car looking for duplexes or any property that looked like it needed a substantial amount of work done, because I'm personally looking for value add deals, and most likely those value add deals are going to be me renovating them. However, no matter how you get your list of properties, you eventually need to get to the point of finding the owners of those properties and the contact information of those properties, so you can do just that, make contact with these people, nurture a relationship, and eventually buy that property. And so that's exactly what we're gonna do in today's video. We're gonna take that list that I found driving for dollars last video, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how to find the owners of those properties, as well as the contact information that goes along with these owners, so that you guys can start finding deals off market, building these relationships, and getting great deals that you normally wouldn't be able to find on market. So guys, if that sounds good, stick around to the end of today's video. And while you're at it, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Now, let me preface this by saying, if you guys have a list of, say, 500 to 1,000 properties that you want to skip trace, which skip trace just means finding the contact information of the owners, well, you're gonna most likely want to pay somebody else to do this, whether that be a company. There's a lot of companies out there that will skip trace properties for you, or say a virtual assistant, which is what I currently do. You're gonna wanna pay somebody, because it is time-consuming, repeatable task that's relatively easy once you know what you're doing, and it's very easy to outsource that to somebody else. However, this is of course still something you need to know how to do, so you can train, say, a virtual assistant on how to do it. Or say you have 5 to 10 properties, maybe 20 properties, that through driving for dollars you found these properties that you wanna call, and you don't wanna wait 3 to 5 days for a company or a virtual assistant to skip trace. You can just bang it out real quick and go ahead and call those owners. So that's what we're gonna cover today, is how to find these on your own, and then therefore you can train somebody else how to do this in the future. Now, as I talk through the rest of the video, I'm going to overlay my desktop screen for you guys to see as I go throughout this process. So guys, you can pay attention more to that as I talk and overview what I'm doing in this video. Now, pulling up on the screen here is a list of the properties that through driving for dollars, just an hour on last Saturday, that I found. These are some properties I want to call and try and nurture a relationship with, so that I can buy these in the future. Now, I've already filled in some of the owner's information, like name and address in some of these sections, and phone numbers in some of these sections. But most likely, as you're driving, you're gonna have just the address. And now this address is all you need. Depending on where the property is, you can look up on the local county auditor website. So in Columbus, that auditor is Franklin County Auditor, and they have a great website that I can look up the information on that website. If you're in a smaller town, you may not have an actual website. You may need to go to the physical auditor office, or perhaps contact a title company where they can get this information for you. Now you can go ahead and take this address, go to the search tab if we're looking at the Franklin County Auditor website, click on address, and then paste in that address, and that'll pull up the summary page. This will probably be relatively similar on most websites throughout the country. However, you may have to play around with this a little bit for your local area to find exactly where this is. Now, if we look at the summary page here, we see the owner name is at the very top. Now, this could be an LLC, this could be an actual person, this could be a trust, could be many different things here. And so for Franklin County, the first thing we want to do here is one, check the rental contact tab. Now, you may or may not have this in your area, so if you don't have this, not a big deal, but this first step is kind of a quick way to see if we have the information already available. If we don't, we skip on to the next, and so if you don't have this tab available in your area, just skip this. So on this rental contact tab, in Franklin County, if you rent your property, you're required to register it as a rental or get fined each year. A lot of people still don't register it and accept that fine because they don't want their information public. However, we can check this tab and see if the owner has registered their name, their phone number, their address as the rental contact. Now, a lot of times we'll pull this up, and in this situation on the screen here, we'll see that Heart and Home manages the property. Well, Heart and Home is a local property management company. Even though they list themselves as the owner of this property, I know that's a property management company, and I know looking at the owner name that that owner name is different from the property management company. So I'm going to look at this and see that, all right, that rental contact page doesn't help me out at all. Now, what you might find is that that rental contact is the same name as the owner listed on the other page, on the summary page, or you might see that the title says owner and it's an actual person's name. That's a good place to start, where you can call that phone number, and if it's a good phone number, sometimes it'll be out of date and disconnected. If it's a good phone number, that's a great place to start and see if you can get in contact with the owner that way. However, a lot of times the information on this tab is either out of date, a property management company, or just blank. And so if that's the case, we don't want to talk to a property management company. We want to talk directly to the owner. And so we're going to move on to step 2 here. Now, step 2 is to find the LLC member, and this obviously only pertains that if the owner on that summary tab is an LLC or a company. So if it's just a person's name, then we'll go ahead and skip on to step 3, but let's cover how to find the owner of the LLC at this point. Holding real estate within an LLC is a very popular method of liability protection, and so you'll see this very, very often, that the property is not actually held in, say, a person's name, an individual, it's held by an LLC. Now, there are a couple websites you can use. I'll go ahead and just kind of copy paste them on the screen here that you can take a look, and it'll also be down in this description below. I use one specific to Ohio, but there's also a website that you can use nationwide. So let's look at 841 Ann Street. The owner listed on the auditor website is South German Village LLC. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to the website I use for Ohio and Google that South German Village LLC. And that'll go ahead and pull up a few different options. You click the one that matches, and that'll open up, a page here. Now we see in the main section, the registrant agent is Andrew Thomas. And right there, that's usually who you want to call. That's usually the owner. And then right underneath that, a lot of times will be a P.O. box, but if it's not, that's probably the owner's address. It's at least their mailing address. So you can help verify in the next step if the Andrew Thomas we find through looking for the phone number is the correct Andrew Thomas by also matching with their address. So step 3, now that we have an actual person, whether by finding that on the summary page of the auditor website, or by kind of pushing into the LLC and finding that member who is the managing member, or at least somehow responsible for the LLC, we can take that name and we're going to find the phone number for them. Now, a lot of times it's relatively easy to find a mailing address for these people, whether it be a P.O. box. You can look on the summary page and see the owner address, or say the tax mailing address, or if you look up the LLC, you can see on that main page that there's an address under the person's name. That's cool, and I use that as a last resort. A lot of times sending a letter to somebody via mail usually ends up right in the trash. So what I prefer to do is text or call. I usually, through Launch Control, which is a very cool software, very expensive, but my brokerage pays for it, so thank you, brokerage. You can send out a ton of messages, bulk messages, and fill in their name, their address, whatever. And then it'll tell me which ones are landlines, so I obviously have to call those landlines. And it'll tell me which ones weren't delivered, maybe wrong phone number, disconnected phone number. And then it'll tell me the successful ones. And as people respond to that, if any of them respond with a warm, message like, hey, maybe, I might be interested in selling, I'll go ahead and call them right after to kind of continue that conversation. Anybody else who either doesn't pick up, who either doesn't answer the text message or whatever, I'll call them again later. And so ideally, we want to find a phone number for every one of these owners. Not always possible. Sometimes it's very difficult, and sometimes you just can't find it at all. Now, those are the perfect properties to, call or get in contact with the owner because nobody else can find their information. However, we're going to do a basic search here and find what we can on the owners we pulled up. The website I use is fastpeoplesearch.com. If you're within the United States, you can use that as well. That'll be in the description below. However, you can take that person's name and in the name tab, paste it, put what city they live in. So that'll usually be their mailing address if you could find it. Use their zip code, their city, whatever. And that'll help narrow down options. So we obviously don't want, in this scenario, an Andrew Thomas that lives in California because he clearly doesn't live in California. He lives in Ohio. And so we'll search that, see what it pulls up. If it doesn't pull anything that it has an address that exactly matches their mailing address, I will usually also search just the address itself. In this scenario, the address doesn't pull anything up, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call the Andrew Thomas that has an address in Ohio, as the other ones are not in Ohio. So the best odds of me getting connected with the right person is by going with somebody who actually lives in Ohio. And guys, that's really it. There are much more complicated scenarios where you just cannot find the owner. And a lot of times I will either do door knocking, because a lot of times you can find the mailing address. So I'll do door knocking. I've been doing that for a couple properties that I really want to buy, but I'll usually only do that if it's a big enough deal. So if it's, say, a 5-unit property or a 10-unit property, it's worth me following up with that person for the next 6 years to try and get that deal, right? For just a duplex that looks pretty turnkey, there's probably not any reason to do that, just from a time management perspective. However, this is pretty simple to learn, pretty simple to outsource to somebody else to do. And this is a way you can get started right away, cold calling property owners and trying to get that next deal as an off-market deal. 2 out of my 3 duplexes I bought were off-market deals through either a relationship I built or through cold calling. And so this is a great way for you guys to find some off-market deals. Not necessarily taking advantage of the owners. However, surprisingly, a lot of owners, they just don't want to list their properties on market. They don't want people to know they're selling. They don't want to go through the hassle that they perceive they'll encounter listing on market. And so they're willing to take a fair price off market for their property. And what that means is you don't have to go into a bidding war with other people on market. You give them a fair price, you get a fair price, which turns out to be a relatively good deal compared to what you would get on market. So guys, I hope this is helpful. I hope you enjoy. Maybe one of my next videos here will do some cold calling as well. I'm not sure if that'll be too interesting or not. However, might throw that in there to help you guys out. So guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate you watching today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Good luck out there finding your next deal. Have a great day. Bye.